for how to assemble a batch of kombucha, but I'm going to wait until we maybe have a few people on here to watch. I know there were some people that were curious about how to brew kombucha, and it's pretty easy. I'll just touch on a little bit before we get into it. So kombucha is like a probiotic drink that you can drink. Generally about like 4 ounces a day is enough to get your intake of probiotics. What it is it's a liquid. It's a caffeine and sugar based liquid with a SCOBY inside that will convert the sugars and the caffeine, which is its food, into an acid, and that's what makes the liquid turn into like a vinegar, which then you would drink, and then it's full of good bacteria for your gut. What does the converting is your SCOBY, and a SCOBY is an acronym for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So it's made up of the bacteria, which is, I'll show you one, and then the strands of yeast that kind of come down, and you want like an equal balance of both in your liquid. I have a bunch of SCOBYs in this jar here, which is called my hotel. It's where they all hang out when they're not being used. And then this liquid is kombucha that has just sat over time and has become more and more acidic, where like a mold won't grow in this type of environment, and they'll just kind of hang out in here. Once in a while I'll add some sweet tea to this, which is that sugar caffeine mixture for their food. Like every 3 months I add like maybe a quarter cup, just to more or less to feed them, but also to have the liquid. The liquid will start to evaporate, so I want to keep them covered so they don't dry out too. And I just keep this in my pantry. And then the reason why your SCOBY, which is what you will put and what will float in the top of your brew, while it's brewing, it will basically create a film along the top of the liquid in the shape of whatever jar you have it in. That's called a baby. The mother is the original one that you put in there. And every time you make a new batch with fresh sweet tea, you're going to get a layer on top. And if you just leave it in there, it'll just get thicker and thicker until you're ready to peel it apart or put it in here. So you'll constantly have more and more SCOBYs that you eventually need to put in a hotel like this. They are good to hang on to for in case one of yours goes bad. I like to rotate mine out because some of them start out as babies and they're thin. I start to get them thick, then I peel them apart, put them back in here, and then work at getting another one going. Once I have like a good thick one going, it's nice to keep it for a while because it makes like nice carbonation, good flavor in the kombucha. But right now I'm starting to get one going, so this kombucha isn't going to be as carbonated as I would like, especially also because it's not very warm in the house. So this took a long time to convert to brew. For me, normally it's like 3 to 5 days, and this was almost like 2 weeks before I felt like the taste was right. Things you can do with extra SCOBYs. I haven't tried this, but I'm curious about chopping it up and then you puree. I'm going to do this when we get some fresh strawberries, puree fruit, and then you let the chopped up SCOBY soak in the fruit and then dehydrate it with like raw sugar. Allie's walking around the kitchen. And so they're like sugar candies or SCOBY candies. I'm curious about that, but right now I just keep them in here and have given them to friends. The other thing I'm excited to maybe try soon, I haven't washed this jar since I got it, which was probably in the fall, and it's a good idea to strain out the liquid and wipe down the jar like every 6 months or so, and then I can strain out the yeast that builds up kind of on the bottom, and then make a sourdough starter with that. So I'm planning to hopefully do that soon as well. All right, so earlier today, I made some sweet tea, and the reason why this is late on me preparing is because the sweet tea was hot and it needed to come to room temperature. So the day I know I'm going to bottle my brew and start a new one, I will make up some sweet tea earlier in the day so it can cool to room temperature. So this recipe, I guess, is from just taking bits and pieces from different websites and just finding what has worked for me. You can call me out if you think if there's something you've heard that maybe I'm doing wrong, but you can't really mess it up. So that's the nice thing about how easy this is. So I just have this covered so that no dust or fruit flies, if there were any, would get in it, but it's just sweet tea that's been cooling down to room temperature. And then in here is my SCOBY with my kombucha that has been brewing with the original batch of sweet tea for a while now. And then I have it covered with a cloth that can keep out dust and bugs, but let air circulate. They need some air. The hotel had the plastic cap and a little air gets in and out. I know that because it does evaporate, but you can keep that sealed so that they just kind of go dormant. They don't need the air to circulate. All right, so I have some bottles here that I'm going to put my, I'm going to bottle my kombucha in. I had some awesome kombucha that I make mine with black tea, but I had some in Seattle that was brewed with green tea. I have the bottle here still, and they didn't flavor theirs, and it was amazing. But it had the right amount of carbonation and flavor, which I feel like when you can't control the temperature in your environment, that's my goal eventually, to get as good as it tasted, but it would be hard probably for me to do that. So I haven't just bottled mine and let it sit without flavoring it, but you certainly can do that. If you're a newbie to kombucha, flavoring it kind of helps you transition into enjoying kombucha. So some of the things you can do when you bottle it. So before I actually put it in my bottles, I'm going to put in my flavoring. So I have apples, which I was going to show you. This is an older one that's been in the fridge for a while, and the apples have kind of turned the color of the kombucha. And once I drink this, I'll just dump out the I'll strain it, dump the apples out, feed them to the chickens, and then drink the kombucha. I like doing a little bit of ginger too, but I don't have any ginger right now that I can use. So I'm just gonna, you can chop up your fruit, whatever you want, however you need to get it into your bottle. If you use a bottle like mine, I need to get it pretty thin to fit through the top. I have used just like mason jars to do this, the second ferment after I'm bottling it. But I feel like these pop tops just hold in, you know, helps them get carbonated more easily. So if I can have these to bottle in, I will bottle in these first before I use a mason jar. Sometimes I run out, so then I have to use a mason jar. So you don't need a lot. Like some people just put an apple core in and be good. This will probably give it a lot more flavor. And then the sugars are going to help convert during the second ferment. The sugars in the apple are going to help it get carbonated. I have some cherries, dried cherries, so I'm going to just throw some of those in. So this will be cherry and apple, which will be yummy. I've never done that before. I've done just strawberries before. That's been really yummy. So you probably don't even need that many, but I probably did like 8 in there and a quarter of an apple. So I'll finish up this apple. Do it in here. And the cherries will probably be good, so I'll throw those in too. Alright, so before I do another recipe or another one, I'm going to see how much I can fill these up. Alright, so I'm just going to get out 5. I'm just going to bottle my first brew, or first ferment. This is the first ferment where you do what I'll show you at the end, what I start with is the SCOBY with the black tea, sweet black tea, and then my second ferment will be when these bottles sit for another week or so on the shelves to get carbonated, and for the kombucha to eat up the sugars from the fruit, and then they'll go in the fridge. Show you, I'm just filling these up, and then we'll see how far they get me. Okay. So that is going to go sit in the pantry for about another week. Like I said, a week is what I was doing before, like last summer, but it hasn't been very warm in here because of the winter. We keep it cooler in the house, so I might let these sit a little longer. There is a risk of them sitting out too long and getting really carbonated, and the glass can break, which I've seen happen. It hasn't happened to me. It did happen in my fridge once, but it might have been because it was cold in the fridge, more of a freezing issue than a carbonation issue. But I don't think these will get too carbonated just because the original batch, the SCOBY, wasn't very big. So I don't think these are going to carbonate as much. Okay, so I still want to get more out of here. I want to leave about like 3/4 of a cup of this liquid for the next batch, so that the sweet tea has some of the original starters, so it's still on the more acidic side, so that mold doesn't grow, and it helps it start to break down the sugars in the sweet tea. So I don't want to get rid of all this liquid yet. So I'm going to do one more. The other one I like to do, this is my easy go-to flavoring agent, or flavoring whatever recipe. If I don't want to just do fruit, I'll do this juice. It's called the Power of 7. It's from Trader Joe's. It's awesome. I love it in my kombucha. But since I don't know if I'm going to be able to get, I want to be able to use most of this. And if I were to fill up these jars with the juice, I'd probably fill it up to about here. Well, let's see how much I have left. We'll just go for it. All right, I'll show you how I do the juice then. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this. I didn't think I would use much, so I was thinking I might not use the juice and just finish off this mouthful. But I like this one a lot. So. Okay. So I'm gonna again put my whatever flavor I'm using in first, and then fill it with the kombucha. So I know that I have the right amount of liquid. That's good for me. Some people use less, but that's, I don't know, about how much I'm using. And then put some kombucha in. We'll see where we're at from there. So for me to know when the kombucha is ready, I think I see some yeast, little yeast strains getting out from the bottom into this one. I taste mine, and I kind of know, like, once that sweet tea flavor is gone, it's ready and starts to taste more like kombucha. Which you'll get to know, and you can kind of smell it too, and it'll go from this dark brown to more of a light goldeny brown color. I'd like to get a little bit more in there, but that's all right. So this one I didn't fill up as much because I need the rest of this liquid to hang out in here. All right, so I got 3 bottles out of that batch. So these 3 bottles, 1, 2, 3, will sit in the pantry for about another week. And once this SCOBY gets nice and thick, when this is brewing in here, you can start to see carbonation form, and then you'll see it in your bottles as well. But like I said, I might not get very much carbonation out of this batch. All right, so then I'm just going to add my sweet tea. So if I were ready to put this SCOBY away or peel it apart, I would take it out, do whatever I needed to do with it, show you, and then I would put it back. But I may have just left it in here and thrown my tea in. I'll show you this one. So the one I had in there from a couple weeks ago, I don't want to really peel these apart, was this part right here. There's some yeast on the bottom, and then this is what grew over the last couple weeks. And so I'm just going to let that sit there. They'll kind of grow together and get thicker next time around. All right, so I'm going to pour my sweet tea in. And because I already added sweet tea to my hotel when I made the last batch, I'm not going to need to add any, but sometimes I might add a little bit just to give it some food to eat. But this will just go on here. So this is 8 cups of filtered water that I boiled today. And then I put 6 black tea bags in. And let those brew for like 5 minutes. Hold on. And took those out, and then I put in 3/4 cups of white sugar and just dissolved that in the hot water. And I just covered it up and let it get to room temperature. Once it's at room temperature, you can pour it into your jar after you've bottled what you want, and then you put your SCOBY back in. SCOBYs don't like hot water, the hot boiling tea water. So you want to make sure it's room temperature. And then they also don't like metal, so I have my rings off. Stainless steel, I believe, is okay because you can cut them with knives or stainless steel scissors. But no metal, and when you're brewing, you want to brew in glass, ideally. So you want to avoid plastic too. If you had, my hotel has a plastic cover, which is great. If I had one jar, at one point it had a metal cover, so I just put plastic wrap over it and then the metal on, because if it condenses on the metal and the liquid drops down in, it could mess with the SCOBY. So that's it. My sweet tea is in there with a little bit of the starter liquid, which is the liquid I left in from the last batch. I placed my SCOBY on top, and it will sit in there then until it is ready to be bottled. And I just keep rotating through. If I need to take a break, I will just bottle all the liquid, or if there's a little bit of liquid left, I'll just dump it into the hotel, put my SCOBY in the hotel, close up the hotel, rinse this out, and then I can leave my SCOBY sit in the hotel for however long I need, if I need to take a break, or if I know that like I won't be back. You know, if I know this is gonna be ready to bottle in a week and I'm not gonna be around to do it, like if I were going on vacation or something, then I just clean this out and put everything in the hotel until I'm ready to start a new batch. That's about it. Don't know if I missed anything. Do you have any questions? I'll stay on for like 1 or 2 more minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can comment below and I'll see that so I can answer questions later if you happen to watch this video at a different time. Yeah, and let me know if you brew kombucha and maybe what some of your favorite recipes are or favorite tricks. I love carbonated kombucha, so if you know any good tricks for that, other than I've just been leaving it out for longer periods of time, and when it's warmer it's better. But if you know any tricks for that, let me know. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Hey, I was just going to open up my kombucha that I made last week. It sat in my pantry for a couple days longer than I normally let it sit, and it looks like it maybe got fizzy, which I didn't think it would. So I just put a towel over the top and I'm gonna pop it open, just in case it does get really fizzy. And on a rare occasion, the glass can explode, so this keep me safe. Yeah, it's going. Watch this. Do you hear that? It is totally fizzy. Woohoo! Yay, fizzy kombucha. Okay, so I wanted to just let a little bit air out, but I want it to stay fizzy because I'm going to put this in the fridge and it'll be chilled and then I'll have it later. So I want to make sure it stays fizzy. I'm excited to try that with the apple and cherry.